Welcome to History with Master Squishies. In today's video, we'll be covering the history of the Tiger I. We'll be going over who made it, the design, what nations used it, some of the battles that took place in, and how it performs in-game. To start off with, the Tiger I is a German heavy tank and was originally designated the SD KFC-181 and was redesignated the Panzerkampfwagen 6 Ausf E, with the nickname Tiger being given later on by Ferdinand Porsche. The Tiger was developed by Henschel in 1938 to 1941 and was produced by Henschel with a total production number of 1,347. Though the Tiger, as an idea, was designed in 1938, the Tiger that we see is vastly different than its original concept. In 1937, Henschel was requested to develop a breakthrough vehicle in the 30 to 33 ton range. This vehicle was the Deutschbrawagen 1 or DW1, which the hull closely resembled a Panzer III and the turret resembled a Panzer IV-C short-barreled 7.5 cm. The DW1 only had one completed prototype hull before the request was made for a heavier armored tank, which would lead to the Deutschbrawagen 2 or DW2. Alongside the initial tests in September 1938 for the DW2, another chassis was in testing. This was the VK30.01H. The VK30.01H was improved in the areas that the DW failed and retained the positives of the DW. However, due to delays in production, the first 8 hulls were delivered on November 30th, 1941. By the time the hulls had arrived, Germany had faced the Soviet KV-1s and realized that the VK30.01H would need to be upgunned. However, the chassis and turret couldn't handle the new gun without heavy modifications. Thus the project was dropped, and 8 of the VK30.01H turrets would be placed on the Atlantic Wall, while 2 hulls would be turned into Sturmmeers. In 1939, a short-lived project for the VK36.01H was born. This new design was to have a turret with 100mm thick walls mounted with an L/20 or an L/28 howitzer. While being designed in 1942, it was specified that the new heavy tank should have 100mm frontal armor and 60mm thick side armor, while the turret needed to accept a 75mm gun. A single VK36.01H chassis was delivered in 1942 and the project was dropped. Porsche also worked on some Tiger designs, the first being the Porsche Type 100 or VK30.01P in 1941, which used air-cooled engines and gasoline-electric drivetrains. The name originally was the Leopard, but later changed to Tiger, with only 2 hulls being made. The second design was the VK45.01P, which used the Type 100 design with upgraded parts, and by May 1942, test vehicles were delivered. The rest of the order and production suffered heavy delays with automotive parts, and finally the project was terminated, but the unfinished turretless hulls were used to make the Elephant. Finally, the Tiger that we know was made using the newly designed VK45.01H that fit the new 1942 requirements. The turret was changed to the lower Porsche turret seen on the VK45.01P, and an 8.8 cm KWK gun was mounted due to the tight schedule and the need for the tank. The Tiger differed from early German tank philosophy of balanced mobility, armor, and firepower. The Tiger focused on armor and firepower, but wasn't slow compared to its opponent's best. I do hear a lot of talk about the Tiger being outdated before its creation or not being the most technologically advanced, but most of this is simply just not true. The Tiger, though the idea did stem in 1938, was designed for 1942. It didn't have sloped armor because it simply wasn't needed for the most part against the average tank, and would increase the cost of production heavily. For example, the Tiger could penetrate the differential case of the American M4 Sherman from 2,100 meters. The British Churchill Mark IV was vulnerable to the Tiger from the front at a range of 1,100 meters to 1,700 meters. The Soviet T-34 was threatened at 1,500 meters, where the frontal nose beam and the front hull could be pierced, along with the driver's hatch, which could be forced in and collapse inward when it was hit. The upper glacis and turret armor could be defeated at a range of 100 meters to 1,400 meters, and finally, the Soviet IS-2 was able to be defeated in a 100 meter to 300 meter range with a hit to the driver's front plate or nose. While the Tiger performed well, it did start to suffer as time went on. For example, the M4 Sherman, when it was upgraded to a 76mm gun, had a chance to penetrate the driver's front plate at 600 meters, the nose at 400 meters, and the turret at 700 meters on the Tiger. The M36 tank destroyer and M26 Pershing could penetrate the front plate at 1,000 meters with standard ammo and 2,000 meters or more with high-velocity armor-piercing rounds. After the British 17-pounder was fielded, as seen on the Sherman Firefly, it could penetrate the Tiger's driver's front plate at 1,700 meters. The T-34-85 could penetrate the Tiger's front at 200 meters to 1,000 meters, and the IS-2 could penetrate the front armor at 1,500 meters to 2,500 meters. If that's not enough evidence for its performance, then we'll look at its average kill-to-death ratio and one of its most extremes. The Tiger had 11.52 enemy tanks destroyed for every one loss. In comparison, the American M4 Sherman had 3.6 destroyed for every one loss, and the Soviet T-34 suffered a 1 destroyed to every 3 losses. However, as time progressed, parts and fuel were in limited supply, causing the Tiger to lower its kill-to-death ratio to 5.25 tanks per 1 Tiger. Another issue was the transmission wasn't as reliable as most, but the biggest issue was the tracks and suspension. Next, we'll move on to one of the most extreme cases for the Tiger, which was at the Battle of Kursk. A single Tiger took on 50 T-34s, with a total of 22 tanks destroyed and the rest retreating. Even with these examples, it doesn't paint the full picture, because a tank is just a tank. It's the crew, strategies, training, and environment that determines its performance. A Tiger crew received extensive training before it went into combat. This made the Tiger perform beyond its optimal years, with such training being to angle their tank to optimize the armor, or use trees and bushes as camouflage around them. The Tiger 1 tank was equipped with a single turret, mounted with an 8.8cm KWK-36 gun, and a secondary MG-34. It had a maximum of 120mm of armor, but the gun mantle could be as thick as 200mm. And it had a minimum of 25mm of armor. It had a crew of 5, a weight of 63 tons, a length of 6.31 meters or 20.8 feet, a width of 3.56 meters or 11.8 feet, a height of 3 meters or 9.10 feet, and a max speed of 28.2 miles per hour on-road and 12 to 16 miles per hour off-road. Next, we'll move on to its operational history. The Tiger 1 was primarily used by Germany, but also was used by Hungary, and after, France and Romania captured a few and used them in combat. The Tiger 1 started in Russia in 1942. They had little to fear tank-to-tank wise, with the biggest challenge being terrain. The heaviest concentration of Tigers was Operation Citadel at the Battle of Kursk. After Kursk, the Tiger's role became a stopgap defensive tank instead of being a breakthrough tank. In Africa and Tunisia, only 3 initially were deployed in November 1942, but proved highly valuable against the U.S. 1st Armored Division. By March 1943, only 1 Tiger was left, but was reinforced by 11 more. The Panzer Army and Afrika Korps claimed more than 100 U.S. and British tanks destroyed, partly due to their tactics of using anti-tank guns in ambush locations. In Sicily, 17 Tigers saw action. They were ordered to attack an American landing zone on July 11, 1943, but suffered heavily to naval fire and lack of supplies. 10 of the 17 Tigers were destroyed to prevent capture, and later 6 more, with the last one being shipped back to Italy. In Italy, 45 Tigers were sent to fight at Anzio in December 1943 to January 1944. 60% suffered mechanical failures due to narrow roads and poor environment, along with neglecting maintenance. They were successful at first, but naval fire repelled the attack. On February 1945, the remaining Tigers were sent back to Germany. In Normandy, it saw action at the Normandy landings alongside the Tiger II, but took heavy losses due to air raids. Even with the initial losses, the Tigers performed the best and caused the Allies to have to form new tactics. One panzer group claimed 300 vehicles, including 227 Allied tanks destroyed. The Black Baron, who had already claimed 117 kills on the Russian front, claimed another 138 tanks and 132 AT guns, as well as 100 or more armored vehicles and trucks. His most famous action was when he destroyed an entire British 7th Armored Division column in around 15 minutes with 14 tanks, 15 APCs, and 2 AT guns destroyed. Germany's top ace claimed 168 tank kills. The M4 Sherman used tactics with speed and mobility with the aid of hedgerows to flank the Tiger. However, this came at a high cost. For every one Tiger destroyed by an American M4 Sherman, an average of 5 to 6 Shermans were destroyed. In an open field with at least 2 miles of visibility, a well-camouflaged Tiger could destroy an entire platoon before they could even get range. Finally, we'll move on to how it performs in War Thunder versus how it performed historically. In War Thunder, the Tiger I is fairly well done. The armor is nearly perfect, but it has 2 mm extra of armor on all sides. The main gun is right, with it being an 8.8 cm KWK 36 gun, and the secondary is also right, with it being an MG34. The speed is off by 0.3 miles per hour, with it being 27.9 miles per hour, whereas it should be 28.2 miles per hour. All in all, the Tiger I is really well done, and I can't find any significant changes that do need to be made. So with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, squish that like button, subscribe, and let me know what you want to hear about next. I'll see you in the next one.